How you guys doing? How you guys doing? Haven't done a live in a long time. Haven't done a live in a long time. But I'm back, y'all. Tell me, do you think that most people who support police officers are racist? I do. I think most people who support police officers are bleeding heart racist. And I want you to change my mind. I want to hear somebody change my mind. I don't want to hear you make comments about things. Casey Boucher, how you doing? Minshew Jetson, I do. How you doing? I want to explain to people the reason why I believe that most people who support police officers are in fact racist. You want to know why? Because these people understand that the police target black people. They understand they target people that aren't black, but ain't white. They understand that. They understand there's a problem with that, right? But these people engage in a different kind of racism, usually. These people call themselves the allies. And what you'll find oftentimes is that these people engage in a racism that is known as the acceptable risk. So what is that? What is the acceptable risk? Well, some people believe there are an acceptable amount of sacrifices that you can make in order to allow society to run smoothly, So there are always there's always a permanent underclass. And by that is intended for black people. We are the permanent underclass. That's how they see us. So with that being said, oftentimes what you'll find is that these people, no matter what you say to them, no matter how you try to explain things to them, they'll always relate it back to themselves, or they will always try to make it so that black people just have to get into the back of the line and just wait for their complaints. Like, for example, if we mentioned that we need an anti-black crime bill to protect us from the police, if we ever say that, right? First thing that these people will say, well, what about the white folks who are abused by the police? What about this group and that group and this group and that group and this group and that group? And what it becomes is, no matter what happens, it's acceptable so long as it happens to the permanent underclass. See, even people who call themselves allies, they're not free of this, right? Like, for example, when I mentioned the white feminists who historically didn't like black men, that is indicative of what I'm talking about. There's an acceptable sacrifice. And when it comes to black folks and the police, we are the acceptable sacrifice. No one cares so long as things happen to us. It has to get as bad as George Floyd or Rodney King or Breonna Taylor or Tamir Rice or Philando Castile for you to care. But the second a white person is injured, there's lawsuits, there's settlements, there's all kind of changes. The same people who sat there and carried Blue Lives Matter flags, they were down at the U.S. Capitol, and now they're complaining about Ashley Babbitt. When the fact of the matter is, if you really cared about Ashley Babbitt, you would have been pushing for police reform a long time ago, right? If that was your real aim. But that was never your aim. Your aim was that you got upset, you threw a hissy fit, and then you went back to business as usual, because then those same people were shot by Uvalde. Are you making the dots yet? Are you starting to realize some things yet? The same people who went down to the U.S. Capitol and want me to make content about Ashley Babbitt are the same people who were still shot by Uvalde. Because I guarantee you a lot of Trump supporters were in freaking Texas. I can almost assure you that. So with that being said, what is the common denominator there? Race. The police were always intended to keep black folks down. That's not even up for debate. Because it's not so much what they were founded to do. We all know that. But it's what they currently do. What do the numbers say? And the numbers say that these are race soldiers. These are not police officers. These are not deputies. These are not troopers. These are not FBI, CIA, Homeland Security. These are race soldiers. Because that's what they were always intended for. And white folks know that. White folks are fully aware of that. And this is why I don't give them the ignorance excuse. No, this excuse that apparently, we have to give everybody the excuse to give them a chance to catch up. Excuse me, our children are passing away. Our mothers, our fathers, our sons, our cousins, our loved ones, our husbands and our wives. We don't have time for you to catch up. Catch up. Give it a program. We don't have time for another freaking George Floyd. We ain't got time for another freaking Breonna Taylor. We ain't got time for another freaking Tamir Rice. We ain't got time for it. I am so sick of people trying to give the ignorance excuse. I don't want to hear the ignorance excuse. You want to know why? Do you want to know why? Because it doesn't matter how far the internet has come, how far technology has come. No matter how, you have the library of Alexander the Great in your back pocket every day. A library that far exceeds what he ever had. And yet people are still using the same excuse. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. It gets to the point where I'm tired of hearing the excuses. Because even when I present the facts to you, what do? You still argue. TikTok Teddy, you have more than 1,000 followers, and the rule in this chat is if you have something to say to me, you have to hop on guest, sir. If not, you got to go. Stephen Burrell, whatever your name is, the Bane of Law might help. Irrelevant. But again, even when you present them the evidence, right? Even when you present them the facts, what do these people do? Do they agree? Do they concede? No. What do? They deflect to something else. What do? They normally bring up Chicago, right? And that's why I go out of my way to point out all the corruption in Chicago, right? The thing is that they mention Chicago as a deflection, as if a police officer who fatally shoots me in Alaska somehow has relevance with Chicago. See, that's how I know most people who support police officers are racist. Period. I'm not going to change my mind on that because you haven't presented me a convincing argument. I'm only basing it based on their behavior. Some people. You don't think that maybe at some point I've seen some things? Do you think it's possible that maybe, just maybe, I've seen things that might have made me believe this? Do you think it's possible that I've seen behavior from Blue Lives Matter and people who support police officers that would lead me to believe that most of them are racist? Why would I make that conclusion when I cover bad cops exclusively? There's a lot of people who cover black cops exclusively who appear to think the exact same thing. Right? Tap the screen, guys. Give me some likes, tap the live stream. But my thing is that I want you to understand, if you look at most people in these police support groups, you look at most people who support the police, you go to most of these Facebook groups, Twitter groups, you go over to TikTok, you go over to YouTube, especially Reddit. You go to all these police groups, some of these groups that are Republicans, some of these groups that are right-leaning, far right-leaning, it doesn't matter. If you go to those groups, right, and you make an argument generally against police, and you don't even mention race, what's the first thing they're going to mention? Black Lives Matter. They're going to mention Chicago. They're going to mention black-on-black crime. They're going to mention black fathers. They're going to mention all kinds of stuff that, first of all, isn't even based on fact, right? But they'll use that, they'll mention 1350. You know what that is. They will use that, right? All the freaking lies. Even though you've never made a racial argument. In fact, I know this because I have tested that theory. I have made many videos that never mention race. And yet, these people use those same arguments, which lets you know most of them just don't like black people. Because some people have a misunderstanding about the police's role in our society. Some people misunderstand the fact that some people look at the police as a bulwark against black people. See, some people don't like black people, and so they can't do anything about them, but they know the police typically do. Right? So people can be aggressive towards another group without being directly aggressive. Like, for example, you don't have to be directly aggressive against a certain country if you support their oppressors. You don't have to, the idea that I'm not, that if someone's not racist because they support police officers and there being no proof of that. That's like saying that someone is not being, anti-Muslim when we drone strike Muslim countries. I'm pretty sure if you go ask the Muslims, they would say that's pretty anti-Muslim. Pretty sure if you go ask them. So again, we have this idea that you could separate yourself from what you support. And see, that's one of the oldest tricks when it comes to the dominant white society. One of the oldest tricks they love playing. Hey, I'm not against this thing. I just support redlining. Right? I'm not against college students, I just don't think that I should have to pay for their education. I'm not against old people. I just don't want I just don't want to pay for their freaking health care. And the same people who typically say that are the same ones who are on Social Security, who are on freaking Medicaid, Social Security, all kinds of freaking welfare, right? People love to try to separate their support from who they are. People love trying to separate their support from who they are. I don't dislike black people, right? Right? I just support the police no matter what they do. They just need reform. Y'all been saying that for hundreds of years. You were saying the same thing in the civil rights era as they were using water cannons and German shepherds on my people. So if you realize the same arguments were being used then as you're using now, at some point you gotta stop and think to yourself, am I the racist here? You gotta think to yourself, there were people back during the slavery era when that ended who were telling black folks, it's over, get over it. They were saying that then. We have literal manuscripts of white folks saying that then. And they're saying it now. So if your argument is the exact same one, no matter what you are presented with, you are the racist. Just pointing it out to you. You want to know how I know I'm not? Because I used to work law enforcement. And my mind changed. After I went into the actual field, I actually saw things that I realized there's no change in law enforcement. There's no changing it. I tried. I was a whistleblower. I tried my hardest. And I realized very quickly, nope. And when I tried to call out things, do you know what happened to me? The same thing that happens to every black whistleblower. Why do you think Chris Dorner existed? Why do you think Chris Dorner existed? They painted Chris Dorner as a monster, and what he did was monstrous. But if you look into some of his claims, he wasn't wrong. You got people out there who will tell me, why should I, as a white American, pay reparations, pay taxes on reparations? And I turn around and ask them, well, why is I, as an American, period, of any color, paying for police misconduct settlements? Are you going to fight against the police as hard as you fighting against me for reparations? Are you? Are you? No? Then what's the common denominator there? You're supporting a force that clearly is targeting black people. The numbers seem to point that out. But at the same time, you don't want them to get paid. And even when there are clearly cases of police misconduct, what do? Typically? You excuse it. We told you Breonna Taylor smelled. We told you that situation was just messed up. It didn't even sound right. Now we find out it didn't sound right. So all the people, go back to all the articles, all the comment sections, all the videos. Go to YouTube, go to TikTok, go to freaking Twitter. Go look at all the comments, right? Do you think those people apologized? Do you think they ever came back and said, you know what, I was wrong? Acabdevil, I was wrong. The black community was absolutely right about this. Do you think that they came back and said that? Do you? Do you think that at any point those people right, ever said, you know what? You had a point. Let us just pause just for a moment. You'll have this victory. You were right about this one. We're not going to make any further comments. Now that you're wrong, but even now that you're wrong, just mentioning Breonna Taylor, do you know what they're going to do? Denigrate her. And that's why I refuse to listen to the other side. Right? Because if you want me to listen, you have to have a certain level of decency. If you know you're wrong, and you don't go back, you don't say but to that, you say that was wrong, let's move on to another subject. That's how you show that you're listening. But that's not how these conversations typically go, right? Typically, it's a lot of revisionism. I mentioned Ahmaud Arbery, right? And how lots of people lied on that man, said he was wearing boots, he was going to rob a place. None of that was true. Coming to find out, those guys were racist, right? Do you think those people like Tim Pool, another content creator, or other people, came back and said, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong. That assumption I made about that man, just out of respect, because the man did pass away, out of respect for him and his family, let me retract what I said, because that wasn't right. That's not what was revealed in the freaking court files. Right? Even the defense conceded that that's not what happened. Do you think those people came back and said, you know what, I was wrong, I was incorrect, I made an incorrect assumption, and my bad, I'll try to do better on next time. Let me back off of this one. They didn't do that. They still doubled down and tried to make Ahmaud Arbery sound like a monster, even though the man didn't do anything wrong. You see what happened with freaking George Floyd? They defended Derek Chauvin, the race soldier. They defended Derek Chauvin. Despite the fact that I have people on my friends list right now who are white, who were victimized by Derek Chauvin and their kids. That wasn't even revealed before George Floyd. But had people listen to Amy, Amy's on my friends list, had people listen to her, George Floyd might still be here. And what did they do after the fact? They still denigrated George Floyd with lies. Now you want me to listen to you. No, that's not how conversations go. I'm not going to talk to people who are dishonest, who say disgusting stuff. I'm just not going to listen to you. So if you see that's not working, and it's not working with most black people, change strategy, right? But you won't do that because most people who support cops are racist. And you can't change. There's nothing redeemable about anyone who supports cops. Period. You want to change my mind? Act respectable. Right? Just like this guy here, Chico Blanco. Do you see what he's doing? They admitted in court they lied to get the warrant. Oddward. You see this right here? It's just these people think that when you spew this stuff, you're changing minds. And you're not. You're not changing minds. You're just, what you're doing, right, is that you're making yourself, you're putting yourself in a box. And you're making people realize what you are. And this is why people don't want to deal with people who support cops. I refuse anymore. I won't have a serious conversation with people who support cops. I just won't. And yeah, I changed minds. In fact, at one point, I was pretty upset that a lot of cops got more followers than what I did, because I thought I wasn't making like an impact. That was like maybe 2 months ago. I out-followed most cops now on TikTok. And By the way, I haven't the patience for people who are keyboard warriors either. Just letting you know, not my thing. But my thing is that people don't understand that you can prop up cops, you can prop up police support, but so much until people like me who tell the truth rise to the top. Palmerton William, because I'm a liar. What am I lying about? I'm just curious. Right? And I agree with you, Strat King. Cops are bullies. Absolutely. But my thing is that I want people to understand this. Just because someone's not, wearing a white robe or a southerner or something like that, they can still be a racist. See, George Floyd changed how people perceive cops. So did Uvalde. So did so many other scenarios. But the foundational Black American thing, some of the more influential things that are going on around the country, some of the social justice movements on the streets, a lot of the people, we're changing the perception of the modern day racists. See, many of you hide behind this cloak, right? Of well, I don't vote Republican and I don't say the most obvious racist things, so therefore I can't be a racist. No. We're looking at what you support now. We're looking at the microaggressions now. We're looking at things of how you live now. See, we don't care about who you date. That don't mean anything. We don't care about who you marry, who you have kids by. That don't mean nothing. Right? We're looking at policy. Why is it that in your blue state, Black folks are still doing bad? That lets me know the people in that blue state aren't as anti-racist as they claim. Why is it in a freaking red state? So many people are so uneducated. It lets me know you're not as anti-racist as you think you are. Okay? So, with that being said, we are shedding away this idea that it's only the Southern Republican that is a racist. Because that's the one thing I do agree with Republicans. That is unfair. That's an unfair perception. They are not the only racists. Just most of them. But not the only ones. They're right about that. 100%. How in the world, right? How in the world is it that I can go over to California and find so many deputy police gangs who target Black folks, and yet you're telling me there's no racist blue state voters in California? Really? Really? How do the police get their funding then? Who are you voting for? You mean tell me for 10, 20, 15, 30, 40, 50 years, you ain't noticing the police are getting more and more money? And yet the cases of abuse hasn't dropped? But you're pretending that you're not racist because at least I don't vote Republican. Well, let me tell you what Democrats are freaking doing right now. Joe Biden says, in fact, I'm going to quote him. I think we can all agree we shouldn't defund the police. We should fund the police. Joe Biden said that, mind you. My point isn't that I'm saying Democrats are worse than Republicans. I ain't saying all that. I'm saying both sides don't give a hoot about Black people when it comes to police. And they demonstrated that. Like I just said, it's not that they're outwardly racist like the Republicans. We know the Republicans are freaking racist. You don't have to tell me that. I know that. But Democrats show their anti-Blackness through their actions, through policy. Because, mind you, redlining wasn't a word, it was a policy. Segregation wasn't a word, it was a policy. The 13th Amendment wasn't words, it was words on a freaking paper. It wasn't outward actions that showed the most anti-Blackness. It was policy. This is why foundational Black Americans are demanding tangibles, because that's policy. That shows you've made progress. Action. Not words, action. See, that's why I say most people who support police officers are racist, because you know what they do to freaking black folks, to women, to the mentally ill. You know what they do to transgender folks, to freaking LGBT folks. You know what they do. You've seen the numbers, and yet you still support them. Your support has never wavered. It doesn't matter how much money they cost you for police misconduct settlements. That's your money. I mean, if you don't care about your own money, that's on you. You can't whine about welfare then. Because that's money that is absolutely did not have to be paid if that police officer simply was on his best behavior. You pay more in police misconduct settlements than it costs for us to actually operate entire units at war. How do I know this? I actually animated an entire video about it. I pulled a Pentagon report about it. And I'm also a multiple-time combat veteran rated at 100%. So I kind of know my stuff. Okay? I'm not exactly a newbie to this kind of stuff. All right? And what that shows me is that it doesn't matter how much money you got to pay for police welfare, you don't mind. You don't mind the biggest welfare queens in the country, the police. When they got to go on leave, you pay for that. Their gas, you pay for that. Uniforms, bullets, guns, equipment, you pay for that. Misconduct settlements, you pay for that. Pension, you pay for that too. Meaning that we have a police officer. I just did a video. Police officer had CP. He's on leave. He's on paid leave. We're paying this man. And he had all those images. We're paying this man. At what point do you think paying somebody who's ever been accused of that is a good thing? Especially when state troopers go to his house and found evidence of it. See, even when you present that to someone, their mind won't change. They'll just say, "Well, there's bad cops in there's bad people in every job," and yet they will go to Starbucks, and if that barista makes their Starbucks drink wrong one time, they will not just blame that barista. They will never go back to that freaking Starbucks. They will first curse out the freaking barista. They will lose their mind, because we've all seen the Karens in freaking Starbucks. Let's not be looking around. Let's not pretend like we haven't seen it. We've all seen it. Right? But this idea, right? This idea that you're gonna hold a Starbucks barista to a higher standard than a police officer is laughable to me, because most of you do. Let's be honest. Let's just keep it above. And yet someone asked the question, even the black cops? Yes, even the black cops. Want to know why? I'm one of the few channels on the internet that's not a hypocrite. I don't make exceptions for black cops. For example, Espo Libertarian, he's a long-time follower. You can ask him. Cosmo Goddess, you can ask her. I said Elmo, you can ask him. They all follow me, and they all see where I don't make exceptions for black cops. Or Casey Boucher or Butcher. She'll tell you, I don't make exceptions. And you want to know why I don't make exceptions? Because I cover black cops, and I go out of my way to cover them. And you want to know why? Because I want to remove the shield. People only care about black folks when they're in a position to give them a deflection. Right? So with that being said, people mention, well, what about the black cops? And most people who mention that aren't even black. Do you actually think they care about black cops? Of course not. They don't care about black cops. They care about the deflection black cops provide them. But with someone like me who covers black cops too, when they mess up, what's your excuse now? See, there's a method to my madness. There's a reason why I make the content the way that I make it. When it's so indiscriminate. It removes all the excuses. Because if I'm going after black cops too, you can't say, "Oh, well, what about Chicago? That cop could have came from freaking Chicago too, but I'm still gonna talk about him. What's your point? See, when you remove the excuses and deflections, you get to the truth of the matter. You get down to the brass tacks. You get down to what people actually mean when they mention Chicago. What they actually mean when they mention Black Lives Matter. When they actually mean when they say pit bulls. When they say the word Canadian. You know, in Washington State, right? The word for black folks is Canadian. Did you know that? It was a white man who doesn't like black people who actually told me that. Right? And one bad hour says, I'm a nobody who doesn't count. Then why are you here? But with that being said, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and sign out. Thank you, Cosmo Queen. Cosmo Unicorn Goddess. I apologize for getting your name wrong. I said Elmo. Everybody who showed up, Beard, everybody, thank you so much for showing up. Love you all. Horns up, peace out, good night, and good luck.